Thank you all. We have actually started the meeting previously. We're going to reconvene now at agenda item number 4, which is an up. Oh, before we do that, can we just introduce everyone, if that's okay? If I start with my colleague on my right.
I'm Clive Tuvey. I'm a councillor for the Vane Award. Thanks.
Councillor Declan Salmon, Dowlis and Pant Ward.
Councillor Lee Davis for Cairns Ward.
Hi, I'm Simon Jones, a solicitor with the authority, here to advise the committee.
Jill Sherratt from Licensing Matters. I'm here to represent the applicant.
William, I'm an applicant.
PC Steve Mosley, South Wales Police Licensing Department.
Joe Baber, Licensing Manager.
I'm a local resident.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Obviously, agenda item number 4 is an application for a new premises license at 1 Effail Shingrig Trelewis to consider a report of the Deputy Chief Executive. The report author is Joanne Baber, who will now give a brief summary.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is in relation to a new premises licence application for number 1 Effail Shingrig Trelewis. The application proposes the sale of alcohol off the premises Monday to Sunday, 6 AM to 11 PM, with the same opening hours. A copy of the application form and accompanying plan can be found in Appendix A of the report. During the consultation period, representations were received from South Wales Police. These requested that the start time for the sale of alcohol be amended to 8 AM and that certain conditions be attached to the premises licence. And a copy of their representations can be found in Appendix B. 9 sets of representations were also received from local residents, and copies of all of these can be found at Appendix C. Since writing the report, the applicant has agreed a number of conditions with South Wales Police. These have been circulated to members prior to today's hearing, and also circulated to the local residents who have submitted representations. In determination of this matter, members must have regard to the 4 licensing objectives. Members must have consideration to the representations, and they must take such steps they consider appropriate for the promotion of those licensing objectives. The steps available to members are outlined in section 2.1 of the report. Thank you, Chair, members.
Thank you, Joanne. If we go on to Officer Mosley, and then if any members have got questions then.
Good afternoon, Chair, Committee and all persons present. I'm here this afternoon representing South Wales Police in my role as licensing officer in regard to the application for a new premises licence at the address of 1 Effail Shingrig Trelewis, Charlie Foxtrot 466 Delta Papa. The objective of my role is to ensure that all licensed premises are run responsibly and that the licence objectives are promoted. My view is that this is the best achieved in working closely with responsible authorities and multi-agency partnerships related to the licences and licensed premises. As part of my role, I have attended the address accompanied by Merthyr Tydfil Borough Council's licensing manager, Joanne Baber, and met with the applicant, who will also be the designated premises supervisor. We've discussed the application and proposed operating hours with the DPS, the applicant. This is due to my concerns with the proposed time that the applicant wished the sale of alcohol to commence. I have requested that the timing be changed from 0600 to 0800 hours. My reason for concerns was that the premises near a bus stop and children would be waiting to catch buses to school, etc., and also parents escort their children to nearby schools. I will say that the timings were sort of agreed during my visit. I have submitted my representations on behalf of South Wales Police, which detail the conditions I would request to promote the licensing objectives. I feel the conditions I've requested are proportionate and justified and cover all aspects to manage the sale of alcohol. Prior to this committee meeting, I conducted a search using South Wales Police data systems covering a span of 5-year period, and can report that there have only been one report of antisocial behaviour or crime-related matters. This was reported on the 20th of February 2022, which resulted into the views causing damage to a bus stop. But upon police arrival, no persons present, and there was no damage to a bus stop. As a police officer, I am sympathetic to the concerns from residents. However, from a licensing perspective, cannot see any reasonable grounds for me to object to the application of the new premises licence. That's all, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Officer Mosley. Did any of the members of the committee have anything to ask?
Oh, yes, I was wondering, Joe, I noticed in the letters of objection, you redacted quite a lot of them. What was it you were redacting out of interest?
So, Councillor Tuffy, the any relevant representations have to directly link to one or more of the 4 licensing objectives. So if there's any information within the representations that don't, then we have to take them out because they can't be accepted. So, for example, there was some information about residents not being able to park their cars. That is not linked to one of the 4 licensing objectives. So that sort of information was taken out, as well as there was some mention in a number of representations about there being other shops already in the area. We haven't got a cumulative impact policy or any cumulative impact zones in Merthyr, so other licensed premises being available that can't prevent another premises from being granted a licence. So that information was taken out as well.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned earlier about changing the time from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. You mentioned school children, but obviously school children still go into school between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. So I didn't quite get changing the time from 6 till 8.
Yeah, I just had concerns to keep in line as well with other sort of licensed premises within sort of the borough and the area. I felt it's proportionate for an 8 o'clock, commence time for sale of alcohol. However, sort of school's time, as you mentioned, from 8 to 9, but to eliminate sort of any sort of persons go into the premises to purchase alcohol or any sort of proxy sales, I felt it necessary for an 8 o'clock start.
Thank you, Officer Mosley. Joanne, all the representations made by residents reference highway safety, and at 3.3 in the report it mentions the planning were contacted, but I can't see any response from them, so I'm just wondering about
Yeah, so we had a response from the planning department. It wasn't a representation as such because it's not something they're able to do for this terms, but they did respond to say there wasn't planning permission for use as a convenience store. The planning process and the licensing act process have to be kept totally separate, so they couldn't object on those grounds, but they were merely letting us know. I've passed that information on to the applicant and the licensing consultants as well.
Thank you, Joanne. That was one of my next questions, was it in regard to the planning process. Obviously the planning process would also take into consideration those what residents have brought up, because all 9 have mentioned about the parking. And can I ask, why is there a reason why planning permission hasn't been sought yet?
This briefly, Chair, just we acknowledge that planning isn't in place at the moment, and obviously until that happens, I can't answer the question directly, but until that happens, obviously this convenience store can't open. It's just a chicken and egg situation with planning and licensing. You've got to do one or you've got to do the other, and sometimes comes the license first and sometimes planning.
It's for PC Mosley. You said that there was conversations between yourself and the applicant in relation to the conditions that you were setting out in your representation. Were they all accepted?
Over the past couple of weeks, I have liaised with Jill to discuss the sort of the wording regarding my conditions. There was slight amendments to wording, but there was nothing to sort of differentiate exactly what I wanted. It was just slight wording.
Thank you, Simon. Right, I've got no more questions in a second, so I'm going to hand over to the applicant and yourself. Well, what I was going to do was, if they wanted to make representation, and then if the resident would like to come in and ask anyone questions, then yeah. So would you like to come in now? Okay, yeah, that's fine. Lovely. So if you pass over to yourselves.
But because normally you'll do the objectors and then the applicant. I mean, I'm not bothered.
Correct, but I think as long as the applicant has in a normal civil set of proceedings, it would be the applicant that comes last. But I think as long as you have the right to reply,
Yeah,
I think that would be fine.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm here committee on behalf of the applicant, Kabilan Panutharai. I'm going to refer to him as Kabilan if that's okay. A lot easier, I think. He's here to apply for a new premises license. He's the director. The applicant is actually Jashvi Limited, and he's the director of that company. Now, you have in front of you a very experienced and knowledgeable applicant. He worked at Tesco. He sold alcohol for many, many years, worked at Tesco for 5 years, was trained in alcohol sales very comprehensively, as you can imagine by them. Decided to go into his own business 5 years ago, where he opened his own convenience store in Porth. 3 years ago, he opened his second. He still owns both of those, and that was in Neath. And he has actually moved from Porth to this location. Him and his wife and his 3 very young girls live in the house that is connected to what would be the convenience store if they get the licensing and the planning. And the good news and the evidence you've got to draw on, he's had absolutely no problems whatsoever at both of his stores for the whole of the time that he's operated them. He's had excellent relationships with the communities and so on. You can ask him about that if you like. So they're going to live in the house, so they're going to be supervising it at all times, whether it's open or not. Now, in terms of what the store will be, I just want to correct something that was in the application about reference to a post office. That shouldn't be there, and I apologise for that. This is going to be a convenience store as we all know it. So alcohol's 10 to 15% is the usual kind of, you know what it's like. You can buy your bread, your milk, your frozen food, your magazines, the whole array of products. Alcohol is only a small part of that. People will be able to pay their bills, drop off packages and so on. So I think we all know the kind of business this will be. And Kabilan and his wife and brother-in-law have seen this location and thought that due to the lack of proximity of other shops, that it would be a valuable community resource, and that he then decided to set on the path of this third business. So in terms of what you're here to consider, you're quite right about the parking. Those are matters for planning, they're matters for highways. They will be taken into consideration when that application goes in. In terms of what you're here to consider, the licensing objectives, I can tell you that they're just replicating what they already do very well at their other 2 stores. So the main thing, in my opinion, in licensing is staff training. Mr. Panatharai will be there full-time himself. He holds a personal license. His brother-in-law will also be there working full-time. He has a personal license. And then there is his wife, and they want approximately, at the moment, they're thinking 2 part-time members of staff. They've already practically filled those roles with local people who live very, very close by. And they will all be trained by way of an e-learning staff training package that will teach everybody, not just as a one-off, but regular refresher training every 6 months. I think the condition that we've agreed is annually, but I'm advised it will be more than that. And that trains them on absolutely everything they need to know to make sure they sell alcohol responsibly, challenge 25 types of ID, proxy purchases, sales who not to sell to, and things like that. I can tell you more about that if you want. So staff training, obviously CCTV, there's going to be 16 cameras. And as you've heard, when we put these applications in, we obviously volunteer conditions as we see appropriate, always expecting the police to come back with more comprehensive versions, which is what has happened here. And the CCTV condition is very, very comprehensive indeed. There'll be 16 cameras, and the data will have to be kept for a period of 31 days. You have refusals registers, incident registers, challenge 25. Those are the policies and procedures, and would have been anyway, but they are actually mandated now, or will be if you grant this licence, by the conditions that are applied. Now, just to be clear, we put conditions forward. The police then came to me, and it's quite correct. We didn't have a problem with the conditions at all. The only discussion we had was just on wording to make sure that they were fully enforceable, if the licence is granted. So I think, yeah,
Police.
yes,
If we were to grant it,
yes.
would you be happy with those being?
Well, I was
copied in?
just going to come to that because I
Okay.
think you've been sent the final agreed conditions. Yeah, so it's not the ones in the original police letter. There is actually another. Yeah, okay. They're very similar, you'll see, but those are the final version. So those are the policies and procedures. It's a very, very robust application, and in particular with an applicant who has a proven track record over many years. In terms of, and I don't want to preempt what will be said. And again, I want to reiterate what the police said about understanding concerns of residents. They're always concerned when something new is taking place in their area. But you will see that the major issue is with traffic and parking and the road junction, and that is not a matter in my submissions for a licensing committee. Yeah.
Can I just ask for clarification on that, because you've mentioned it twice now, parking and the license and objectives. Parking probably would be considered under the prevention of, ensuring public safety and the protection of possibly children from harm. Am I right in saying that? No, I mean, I'm talking to licensing, sorry.
Yeah, so I think some of the parking issues were left in the representations because the residents were directly linking them to public safety issues. Obviously, it's for members to decide how much weight, they are saying there's public safety issues in relation to parking. So it's for members to take a look at those really and decide whether you do. I haven't taken them out because in the representations they are saying it's a public safety risk. So that is why I've left those particular ones in, and it's for members to decide then what weight to give to them.
Lovely, thank you, Joanna. It's just I wanted clarification on that. Obviously, this has to go to the planning committee as well, where that will probably be looked at more.
No, it's fine. Completely accepted. And I'll just, I mean, look, we have a premises that has 2 parking spaces. The owners are going to be doing their own deliveries. So he has a van, he's going to be going to Booker and doing his own collection of goods. And he will be very, very conscious of the parking at all times. But I submit to you that it isn't relevant. Public safety and licensing has to be linked to the conduct of the licensable activities. So why is public safety deemed a problem? Because alcohol specifically is being sold, or a disco is being held. If you go through the government guidance to licensing, you don't see reference to parking and you don't see reference to traffic because it's not relevant. Because it's just because somebody's buying a bottle of wine, that's not linked to the fact that they're parked outside. So that is my submission on that point. And I'd invite you to just read the government guidance and you'll see that it is completely silent on that point. I've nothing else to say really. It's a good applicant. He's got a track record. The police are happy, and that's the main point from my point of view. That the police have not only quite unusually actually been and visited the premises, and then spoken to us, and they are content that this application upholds the licensing objectives, and they are the experts in the field of all the 4 licensing objectives. And on that basis, I would ask you to grant it as amended. In accordance with the police requirements.
Thank you very. Thank you very much. Can I ask a question? You said the applicant has been in the licensed trade and had a license for 5 years, no issues in that time. And you said his family have moved to the area. You're going to live on the premises. I'm looking at it on Google Street View. Is it the big house behind?
Yeah, the big house to the side. Yes, just imagine looking at the street. If you come back on the Google map and look at the street, you've got the premises they're looking to convert, and then the house right behind it there, right to the side of it.
Right behind.
Yeah, I can see it here. Listen, I've got no more questions.
I was just going to ask what.
Yeah.
Out of interest, why did you drop the post office? There's not one in Bedlin or Trelewis or I don't know in Treharris. Yeah.
It shouldn't have been in the application. That's an admin error from our point of view. So if you
Oh.
want to encourage the post office, feel free.
Oh, no.
But it was our wrong. We should have taken that out. I'm
Oh,
afraid.
right.
Yeah.
There's not one locally, but the post office don't pay very much anyway. So it's okay. Thanks.
Right. The committee have no more questions. If the resident would like to ask questions of anyone.
I'd like to start by asking PC Mosley. I know it's not PC. I'm sorry if I'm calling you a PC, but Mr. Mosley, I was also a bit surprised, right? They made this amendment at time, and they simply made an amendment till 8 o'clock, right? I mean, to me, that solves none of the issues that of risk that what we're talking about here, the children and that, right? To start with, the children are still going to school up until 9 o'clock. The children come home from school at between 3 and 5 o'clock, and then we've got the other thing on time, which is probably one of the worst possible times you can have for having problems, is having serving drink at 11 o'clock in the night. So what surprised me with the police's interjection was that they just made this very simple 2-hour change up to 8 o'clock. Surprised me, right? I would have thought that, as well as that, the police themselves should have taken a look at the parking issues and the danger. Oh, if you want, yes.
Yeah, in relation to the prevention, the licensed objective of prevention of harm to children, within the conditions that I've requested is a challenge 25 policy, and for original proofs of identification to be issued. I can't see that any alcohol would be sold to any children, at any point. But the reason for me to change, you're requesting it to be changed to 8 o'clock. One, I felt that 6 o'clock was way too early. And 8 o'clock was in general sort of what I would ask for any sort of new licensed premises anyway.
To cover this, sorry, in my submission, it's exactly the point that you're raising there about the change. It wasn't so much about protecting children from harm, because obviously you're quite right. Children come out of school, they're there at weekends, they're there at the summer holidays anyway. Children are protected by the way of all of the policies and procedures that are in place. That 6 o'clock was about the fact it's early and having respect for the locale and making sure that it was more of an acceptable hour, really. That was what that 2 hours was about, really, and we agreed to 8 o'clock on that basis.
Stated, I think that the change from 6 to 8 is has little consequence, to be quite frank. What I'd also like to say to Inspector Mosley is, he mentioned about there's been no incidents reported to the police. Well, I can tell you I've reported loads. He spoke about the incident with the bus stop. I reported the bus stop. When I was on the phone to the police station, they could hear the person banging it, right? Bang, bang. And she said, "Is that the noise?" I said, "Yes." I said, "We'll get someone there as quickly as we can." took about an hour and a half, I think, right? He'd gone. They said there was no damage done to the bus stop. No, there was no damage done to the bus stop, because what you've done in Lewis there is you've put these very secure, damageless bus stops, isn't it? With the plastic glass that you can't break, with the roofs that, so because you were forever repairing the bus stops in Lewis because of the damage that was being caused there, right? Because for people congregating on the bus stops. So there was an incident. The incident was reported. The police didn't turn up quick enough to catch the person. It was as simple as that, right? There are other incidents, right, which tend to, how can I say, between the neighbours, because we all talk about it, right? There's a certain futility really in reporting it to the police, because you don't get an immediate response anyway, right? And by the time you get a response, the people have gone, and there's a certain level of embarrassment, right? You feel a certain level of embarrassment. So that's all I'd say about that, right? I'd come back to saying, as far as I'm concerned, with the police, it surprises me that they didn't, especially having visited the site with Joanne Baber, right, didn't notice the close proximity to the junction, the close proximity to the bus stop, and where else do you go? You know, if you were having deliveries, if you have got customers, where are these cars, these vans, where are they going to park, right? Where they must cause a risk. That risk can be a risk to children, it can be a risk to anyone, it can be a nuisance, it can be lots of things. It falls within, as far as I'm concerned, these issues of the 5 points on licensing, right? They're all encompass one another, they all cross-reference one another. So that's all I'd like to say in regard to the police's evidence.
Mr. Danilo, I'll jump into this stage. It may well be something that was going to be responded to by the applicant's representative. You've got to remember that that shop can open up without alcohol, and you will still get the parking issues there. So I think we have to be, as you've heard from the representative, we have to be able to link the public safety issue to the selling of alcohol. So separating that from selling of cucumbers, beans, and stuff like that, it's difficult. It's a difficult thing for the committee to sort of try and filter out what is alcohol related and what isn't. You mentioned about other incidents, and I don't think anyone will say that you haven't had some trouble there, and you haven't reported it for reasons that are, I think, genuine. What kind of incidents were they?
Well, obviously, what you get, don't you? We're on a travel route between Nelson, if you like, and Trelewis and Treharris and Bendinog,
Yeah.
where people walk, right? Especially youngsters will walk,
Yeah.
and youngsters will walk it, having been to nights out and having a drink, right? And there's noise, and there's they are having fun, aren't they? So this is why I'm saying that we can be embarrassing, but what they tend to do on occasions, you see, is they will congregate. Say the weather's bad, they will congregate in the bus shelters. Now, what I fear is what will happen. What the rest of the residents fear is what will happen where there's alcohol available to them up until 11 o'clock from the right there, right? Is they'll get halfway to wherever they go in, stop to get their cheap alcohol, congregate in the bus stops, and create merry hell.
Can I? Sorry, just want to come in here on a couple of issues. Obviously, any antisocial behaviour previously cannot be linked to the current applicant. But you mentioned about CCTV. Did you mention 16 cameras? Is that right? And if so, how many of them are outside?
Yeah, good question. How many are outside?
So 6 camera.
6 cameras outside.
You know, it's obviously a good thing to have cameras, right? But when you've got a disturbance going on, the camera is not going to do anything for you, right? It's just there, isn't it? Right? It'll record something, and whether somebody in this time in the future will be prosecuted because of it, it's irrelevant to what happens at that time, which is it'll be keeping people awake, it'll be disturbing people, and it'll be affecting our well-being. Simple as that, right?
So,
Not at this point. I was going to just respond in my summing up.
Simon, just going to ask, if this was passed today, and issues, because a lot of this antisocial behaviour is before licensed premises is there. If the license is granted for the premises, and then there are issues down the road and they're directly linked to the premises, then you can look at the license.
Yes, put simply, if you can link any future issues to that premises, then yeah, a review can be called. Taking Mr. Dallimore's point that the cameras may not necessarily stop what's going on, it'll record what has gone on. It can act as a deterrent as well. But I think that's essentially it. If there are problems, there is a process within the Licensing Act that if we can link it, because of course we've not had a premises there, and that's a difficulty again for the committee. But if as you say, people are coming to the store, going outside, it's raining, drinking in the bus shelter, which is very convenient to the store and near to your house, then clearly that there would be a link there, and we can come back and we can tighten things or do worse, I suppose.
Right, that originally the building we're talking about, right, was a blacksmith, and it was a blacksmith for years and years. And again, the only time there was ever any issues and problems was when you had big lorries and dropping off horses and that, right? And what you'd find is that they'd come. There'd be no parking space available in Effail Shingred because everybody was parked in their spaces, right? So they'd go in the bus lay-by, or they'd reverse over your grassed areas, right, which have been dug up as more times than I clear to remember and relayed, right? And they'd bring the horses around. So the whole issue of the limiting parking is fundamental to any business succeeding in this place, right? I'm telling you, without it affecting the lives, seriously, the lives of the local residents. I would like now on that same point is just to pick up on something that the lady said, right? She said that the gentleman is going to live in the house. Well, yeah, absolutely. I would expect him to live and continue to park his cars there at the moment, right? What they park there, right, is one van and two cars, right? So there's no space outside that premises, right? No space whatsoever for any customer parking or for any delivery parking, right? Now, the lady says, oh, he's going to take his van and he's going to pick up at Booker's. Well, he'll come back from Booker's and he'll park there. So what I'm saying is that there's once he fills his spaces there, that's it, right? All you have then is where we live and we park outside. And that is the end of it, right? The lady also said, well, there's no issue about selling alcohol late at night. The person will come and go. Yeah, the person might come and go, and the person might go and sit in his car. They may come by a car. There may be half a dozen of them come in cars, and they'll sit in their car. And they may well only have a bottle of wine, but they may drink a bottle of wine, and then they may shoot off down the road. And so the whole premise that selling alcohol at 11 o'clock in the night is not going to cause an issue, right? It to me is just, well, it's nonsense, is it? Serving alcohol at 11 causes problems throughout the country, all over the place. One of the reasons the government have tried to put the price of alcohol up and limit where it's sold. But again, that's another story. So again, I don't want to sound as if I'm just a complainer for the sake of complaining. I'm just trying to bring to your attention the reality of where we are in Effail Shingred. And it's a small little area, right? Which isn't capable, to be quite honest with you, it's not capable of having a business like that, right? And without causing problems to the residents. Equally, I'd say to you again, when I spoke this to the licensing people again, it's part of what they eradicated out of my letter. There's a shop 100 yards away in the estate. I mean, that does exactly the same thing. It's there and it's got its own parking areas outside the estate. There's a shop 500 yards away down in Shingrig Road. Does exactly the same thing. Sells exactly the same things. So there's not even a need in the locality for a business of this type of a shop or alcohol sales. There's just no requirement for it.
I think this is one of the things that we asked earlier on, and I think this is why Councillor Clive Tavy asked why some of the items had been redacted, and it is but this is not something that can be taken into consideration by the licensing committee or the planning committee, to be honest. Right. Can I just ask if any of the license committee have any questions? No. Okay. Did you have any further questions? Okay, what we'll do is if we go up to the summing up, if I hand over to the applicant, and then if you'd like to sum up it as well after that, I'll give you the opportunity as well. Okay, okay, I'll ask the resident then if you'd like to sum up. I know you've summed up quite a bit already, but if there's anything else you'd like to add, and then we'll bring in the applicant and Claire as well.
Now, I mean, I don't want to bore you with the same rhetoric. I mean, yeah, and it's simply a case that I simply do not believe that we've got the infrastructure available to us in FL Shingrig to support this business.
I'd just like to add before we go to the applicant is that as councillors, we are aware of your concerns. To be honest, these are concerns that were probably raised in every ward. So everything is taken into consideration. Okay, if I pass over.
I don't think, right, it only kicks in a couple of seconds later. Thank you. Yeah, and I want to reiterate that it's often frustrating, I think, for residents because they get told one thing at a high level on the news and about alcohol, but actually the Licensing Act is a permissive regime. It's not about how many premises are around. That's left for commercial decisions for business owners. If there's too many, some won't survive. The stronger will. It's just not relevant to a licensing decision. We don't accept that there can't be a business here without problems, because, as you know, our client already runs 2 businesses without problems. And somebody did mention it, and it's actually a point I want to make because it's absolutely true. And I know the police will agree with this, that if you've got a responsible operator with a brightly lit modern shop with CCTV cameras, customers going in and out, staff being able to look out of the window, they're actually an asset, they're actually a deterrent, and people are far less likely to commit any kind of wrongdoing or antisocial behaviour because they need dark alleyways for that. So having somebody like the applicant open in an area like this will actually be a positive. He's another set of eyes and ears, and obviously even so, because he now lives there with his young children, he doesn't want, they're all under 5, and he doesn't want any problems himself, but if there were to be any, he can handle them. So I just ask you to consider his track record, the agreement that we've come to with the police, and absolutely, again, just to respond to what was said, if there are problems, we absolutely would expect a review of the licence. The licence system is perfect for responding to problems. So if it were to be that there were problems, I'm sure there won't be, then there is plenty that not just the police, but the residents can do about it. And all of these issues, as you know, will be looked at, I'm sure, in detail again under the planning regime. So I would ask you to grant the licence today as agreed with the police, and allow the applicant our client to move on to the next stage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Committee members are going to take some time now to go through the application, think about what everyone has said. Simon, do you want to come in and explain the process going forward and how people will be updated?
is we try and give a decision. You know, everybody will leave now. You can stay if you want, or you can go and we can let you know. Same goes to you. I'll stay with the committee and we will come to a decision. And I will verbally then give the decision today. However, I need to back it up then with reasons. And when the reasons are done, they'll be done within the next 5 days. When they are done, that is the date that if you wanted to appeal or you wanted to appeal, it's from the date you receive those. Right. So I will try and I'll say today whether it's granted or not, but the actual detail will be in there. Okay. I have made a note of everything. We've heard your concerns, and we will attach what weight we think is necessary now. Thank you.
How long are we likely to be? Okay, okay.
Yeah, okay. I'll ring the bell and let everyone know when decisions been made. Okay.